Our program is a very structured program. We always teach grammar on Mondays. The students will have the grammar exercises in the books assigned as homework the night before, so they come to class somewhat familiar with the material. On Tuesday mornings, they have a grammar quiz. The key to a successful grammar lesson is preparation. The first thing you have to do is familiarize yourself with the grammar points for the week. Do not assume you will be able to teach something just because it looks easy. The first place to look is always the North Star books. The books usually cover 2 different grammar points, so make sure you plan for both. Make sure you go through all of the grammar material in the book before class. The introduction is a good activity to use in class. The brown boxes cover all the grammar points that the students will need to know. The students have to know these specific rules for both the quiz and the test. Do not overteach the grammar and make it too complicated. Concentrate on the rules from the book only. Make sure you also complete all the exercises in the book. It's a great way for you to refresh the grammar in your own mind as well as anticipate possible problems. At the end of every week, we will have a module meeting where the grammar for the following week will be discussed. Make sure you pay close attention to the points covered and ask any questions you might have. If you are still unsure, feel free to ask your team leader about teaching tips and possible problems that the students might have. In order for your lesson to be effective, you have to set clear goals. The books and the unit plan will give you an idea of what is expected of the students for that week. It's easy to make your grammar lesson overly complicated because English has so many rules and exceptions. Stick to the books and the unit plan in order not to get off track. You should set goals, not only for your grammar lesson, but also for the week as a whole. You should incorporate the grammar into all of your activities even before you teach it on Monday. The main goals for the week will be outlined for you in a unit plan that you will get every week at the module meeting. The goal for the first week, for example, is for the students to be able to answer WH and yes/no questions using to be in past and present, as well as asking questions in the present simple using have. They will be tested on this grammar on the writing as well as the speaking test. You should ask them questions using this grammar from the beginning of the week when you introduce the topic in the reading and writing book. Keep the questions easy and try not to use different grammar points. Board setup is one of the most important things you have to plan for before a grammar lesson. One of the expectations of our program is that we always have SWABATs on the board. This will also help you keep organized as well as give your students an idea of what will happen during the lesson. Some teachers choose to write objectives or goals instead of SWABATs. The main goals are outlined for you on the weekly unit plan. However, your objectives in class should be a bit more detailed and contain your general lesson plan. Here's an example of how to set up your board for the grammar lesson in Unit 1 in the Listening and Speaking book. Dividing the board into 3 sections works for most grammar lessons. The first section is always examples. The second one is for the grammar structure, and the third one is for practice sentences. A lot of teachers also like to use different colored markers to accentuate the grammar. If you do this, make sure you are consistent throughout the quarter. When writing examples, try to use the vocabulary for that week. It's also good to use various subjects, such as I, third person singular, and one plural example. Have the students look at the examples, underline the verbs, and figure out the rules. Always keep the subject, verb, object structure on the board. Write down all the pronouns and have the students dictate the rules for you. Always elicit the grammar structure from the students. You can also talk about the meaning. For example, adjectives always describe a noun, and they often go with the verb to be. Finally, in the last section, write some sentences with common mistakes for the students or some fill-in-the-blank sentences. Always test for capital letters and full stops. Our students will either forget the be verb, add it to another verb, or use the verb to be with nouns. They also have problems using punctuation in contractions. Test if students are reading the sentences closely and paying attention to time words, which tell them if it's past or present. Our program is set up in a way that the students study the grammar at home before the lesson. They should also have completed the exercises in the book before they come to class. This is a good time to have them go over the homework and see if they can spot any mistakes they've made. Have them check the answers with a partner and go over them as a class. Clarify any problematic sentences. You will have to provide additional practice for the students. The first thing you can do is modify the book activities in order to create more grammar practice. For example, in Unit 1, the vocabulary exercises in the Expand and Create section of the book are actually great grammar practice activities. You can have the students fill in the chart about themselves and their partner. You can also have them write sentences about the people in the photos. For example, Tom is kind. In addition, you can have them compare themselves to the people, answering the question, "Are you like Tom?" You can also do a similar activity to practice past simple and have them write about themselves as a child and now. For example, as a child, I was shy. Now I am friendly. You can always create your own materials and additional practice. However, you can also find handouts on our company's internal pages prepared by other teachers. This is a great resource to use. It contains handouts for additional reading, listening, and vocabulary, as well as grammar practice. It also contains PowerPoints and practice tests and quizzes. You will find the link to the internal pages in the PYD Hub. If you can't find it, feel free to ask your team leader. Feel free to also add the resources you have made and are willing to share. The students also love to get a practice quiz at the end of the grammar lesson. They mimic the quiz that the students take every week, and they find it very helpful. They also give you an idea of what and how the grammar for that week is going to be tested, and you can make sure that you have covered all the points in class. You can usually find them on the internal pages, or you can choose to create your own. Lastly, there are a number of grammar games you can play with students if the time allows for it. The students love grammar and vocabulary games. One useful game is tic-tac-toe. It's easy to set up and works for any grammar or vocabulary activity. Divide the board into 9 sections and the class into 2 groups. In each section, write the instructions for what you want the students to do. This can be as broad as just a vocabulary word that you want them to use in a sentence, or, like in the example in the middle square, quite specific. It asks the students to create a question in past simple using tired and yesterday. Explain to the students that the first group has to choose a square and create a sentence following the instructions. If the sentence is correct, they get the square. If not, the other group gets to try. You can also write the mistakes on the board for the students to see where they are making the most errors.